Hi guys, and welcome back to the Fancy Dog Sports Academy Pet Professionals program. This is part 2 of the critical skill of connection. I'm Nicole Webush, and we're going to go ahead and get started. We're going to begin with going over the quiz results. There were a couple of questions that I think were a little bit confusing to you guys, so I just want to go over those and kind of explain my answers. Number 1 was, how do I define connection with the dog? Dog is paying attention to the handler. Dog is on leash and under control. Handler is paying attention to the dog, or both A and C. The correct answer for that question is both A and C. So the dog being on leash and under control really doesn't have anything to do with connection. Connection is the dog paying attention to the handler and the handler paying attention to the dog. Number 2, in distracting environments, dogs can have a hard time processing our cues. Although they may not perform the cue, they likely did hear us, and repeating the cue can teach them to ignore us. That question is true. If we get in the habit of asking our dogs to do something when they're not ready, when they're not paying attention, we will desensitize them to those cues, and it can eventually teach the dog to ignore us. Number 3, why is it important to separate marking a behavior and moving to reward the dog? Dogs understand verbals better, so the movement should be the marker. If you move before or at the same time as marking, the dog will pay more attention to your movement than to what was being marked. It doesn't really matter as long as your timing is good. The correct answer to this question is, if you move before or at the same time as marking, the dog will pay more attention to your movement than to what was being marked. For the most part, dogs pay much more attention to our body and our movement versus what's coming out of our mouths. And so it's important that we cleanly mark the cue, mark the behavior that we were looking for without any movement, and then move to give them the treat after we've marked it. What should be considered when you are teaching new behaviors? Behavior should be taught in a low distraction environment. Appropriate value treats for the dog and the situation should be used. Training sessions should be kept short and fun. All of the above. The correct answer for this question is all of the above. It's important that we teach these behaviors in a low distraction environment, and then we work our way up to something that's more distracting. It also is important that we choose appropriate value treats for our dogs. We can probably use kibble in the kitchen, but once we go to the dog park, it might be better to use something a little more high value. As the distractions increase and the difficulty increases, generally the value of our treats needs to increase as well. Training sessions should be kept short and fun. Dogs do not like to do a lot of repetition, and they can shut down if we try to do that. So we want to keep everything really short and fun. Number 5, what is the first step for teaching offered attention? Walk into the training area, cue the dog to look, mark, and reward. Walk into the training area, let the dog look around, and when the dog looks at you, mark and reward. Walk into the training area, place a treat on the ground. When the dog looks towards your hand, mark and reward. Or, walk into the training area, place a treat on the ground, and when the dog makes eye contact, mark and reward. This question was a little bit tricky. I wanted you guys to think about the first step of teaching offered eye contact. And the very first step what I do is I put the treats on the ground to take the dog's attention off of us and make it easier for the dog to look back at us. So the correct answer to this one is walk into the training area, place a treat on the ground, and when the dog makes eye contact, mark and reward. That would be the first step. The second step would be walk into the training area and let the dog look around, and when the dog looks at you, mark and reward. But typically I do some sort of, either a get it or toss a treat on the ground, or just set the treat on the ground so that I take my dog's attention. I help them take their attention off of me so that they're more likely to look at me for the next treat. And that's kind of how I jumpstart my training sessions. This one got most of you, and I apologize. I don't think I worded it very clearly, and I will be making some changes before the next time this workshop runs. But the question is, when teaching the name game, you should reward for the dog looking at you when you say his or her name. The correct answer to this question is false. And my reasoning was, it's important that you explain to your clients that when they're first teaching the name game, it's not about the dog looking at them. What they need to do is make that connection between hearing the dog's name and getting the treat. Once the dogs make that connection, then they will start looking at you. So later on in the training, yes, you can reward for the dog looking at you. But in the beginning, if your client has bad timing or has not read the dog correctly and the dog's super distracted and they say the name, if they're in the beginning stages of the name game, you really do need to reward the dog regardless of their behavior. So whether or not they look at you. So my point in this question was really helping you to understand in the beginning when you're teaching it, it's nothing to do with what the dog does. You're just making that association between hearing the name and getting the treat. Number 7, what's a good way to handle the following situation? The owner has put out her hand for a touch, but the dog is sitting and doesn't move towards the hand. Wait patiently, the dog will figure it out. Back up while keeping the hand out. Remove the hand, re-engage with the dog, back up to get the dog standing, and then present the hand again, or re-cue the behavior by saying touch again. The correct answer for this one is remove the hand, re-engage with the dog, back up to get the dog standing, then present the hand again. There are a couple different ways you could handle this. You could wait patiently and see if the dog figures it out, but you really don't want to leave them hanging for too long, especially if they're new to this game. So if they don't make any effort to try to touch the hand within 2 to 3 seconds, then I'm doing something else. Backing up while keeping the hand out could also work, especially if you have a dog that kind of understands the hand touch game. So that could work, but what I prefer to do is take away the hand, and therefore I'm kind of removing their opportunity to get a reinforcement. Re-engage with the dog, say, hey buddy, what you doing? Are you ready to work? And then back up to get the dog standing so they're not going to get stuck in a sit for the next repetition. And then I'll present my hand again. And generally that process, those steps, get the dogs up and they get them, it just makes it a little bit easier for them to touch because they're re-engaged with you and they're standing up, so it's a bit easier. Number 8, once the dog has learned the behaviors in the living room, what would be a good place to take the dog to practice generalization? And you guys all got this right. The correct answer is the backyard. So clearly you guys understand that you want to slowly increase the level of distractions and how difficult the situation and the place is that you're taking them. Number 9, what is a good way to handle a dog who has been taught the behaviors but can't seem to do them? Move to a less distracting or stressful environment. Put more distance between the dog and the distraction. Use higher value rewards. Explore the reward history on the behaviors, or all of the above. And the correct answer for this question is all of the above. So if you're in a situation and your dog is struggling and not paying attention to you and struggling to do the cues or to look at you, you want to make sure you're doing all of these things so that they can be successful. If you just started playing these games, your dog isn't super comfortable with them yet and doesn't know them well, then you need to look at the reward history. And of course, they can't do well in a super distracting environment if they don't have a lot of reward history with each of these behaviors. You want to use higher value rewards if it's necessary. You want to make sure you separate the dog from the distraction until they get a little bit more fluent and a little bit more confident. And definitely moving to a less distracting or stressful environment. And we'll talk about this in a little bit when we look at the videos. All right, so we're going to move on to our questions. Question number 1 is, I've always learned to reward the hand touch by placing the treat on the hand. In the video, you say to remove the hand while rewarding. Is there any benefit to rewarding on the hand? This is a good question, and I think dogs will absolutely learn the hand touch regardless if you reward on the hand or if you remove the hand and reward with the other hand. One reason that I like to reward with the other hand and remove the hand that's out there is I want my cue to be really clean, and my cue in this case is presenting the hand. And if the hand's just kind of always hanging out there, I don't think that's very clear to the dog when they should touch and when they shouldn't. The other reason that I do it the way I do is I like that the dog is moving away from the hand with treats to perform the behavior, which is the hand touch. I think this is a really easy and gentle way to introduce this concept. And so as the dog gets a little bit better and understands it's about touching the hand to earn them the treat, I'll keep my hands not super close together, but fairly close together. They'll both be in front of my body. I've got 3 or 4 or 5 cookies in one hand. I've got my flat palm in the other. I'm going to do a touch. They're going to present the hand. They're going to touch. I'm going to reward them for the other hand. And then I'm going to present my hand again as soon as they're done chewing to see, do they understand to come away from my hand with the treats and go to the hand to touch. And so those are a couple of reasons that I do it the way I do. But like I said, dogs are so forgiving and they're so smart, and you can absolutely teach. I think they'll figure it out with no problem if you do reward with the hand. It's just a slightly different way that I do it. I think either would work. All right, I have a border terrier that I do scent detection with. I want to try these behaviors at the trial sites. I know she is stressed because she won't take a treat at all. She will search reluctantly. I was thinking to try these as far from the site as I can and then gradually move in closer where the trial actually is. I would like to know if these techniques are suitable for relaxing my dog at a scent trial. Yeah, absolutely they're suitable for relaxing your dog at the scent trial. This is a big reason that I use these games, is so I can kind of gauge how my dog is feeling. With this particular dog, you're going to want to make sure, though, that the behaviors are very fluent in very non-stressful environments. You're going to want to make sure that you can do it in your living room, and then you can do it in the backyard, and can do it at, maybe a class, maybe out at a park, something like that. And you want to make sure you get a lot of reward history on the behaviors. You don't want to go out next week and ask her for all these things and expect her to do well. Especially with her history of being stressed. I tell my clients, if the dog's not eating food, the dog can't learn. If they're stressed enough that they won't take treats, that's a huge red flag to me. And I work on their emotional comfort and their emotional state of mind before I go do any training at all. So what I would do with this dog is I'd work on these behaviors in a really low stressful, low distraction environment and get her really excited about doing them. And meanwhile, I would probably stop trialing for a while with the scent detection stuff, but perhaps maybe go to a trial and maybe stay outside and just do some get-its, or see at what point she stops eating the food, and see if you can try to figure out what is making her uncomfortable and just helping her feel better about where she's at. It's really not much fun to go to a trial and have our dog shut down. And that's something a lot of us deal with as our dogs, start to get some ring stress. I deal with that a lot with my clients because I do a lot of obedience and rally. And so what I recommend is try to make that positive, that environment a positive one, and work on these behaviors, but do it in a place where she can be successful. And once she can do them successfully in a variety of places, she'll be much more likely to be able to do them at your scent trial. What can I try if my dog won't pick his head up off the ground? We are outside, and I'm waiting in the breed ring for my turn for the judge's exam. My friend took another video after the one I submitted, and he's not as engaged as here. He's smelling the ground a lot. I know there's food in intact females. It's the last day of a 4-day breed show. He responded to catch. When I tried his name, he was smelling the ground. Only his ears perked up at me. I tried calling him pup, and I did get eye contact. He did a few nose touches. So I think this is a situation where you need to start in less distracting environments. Breed shows are super distracting. Like you said, there's food everywhere. A lot of people use bait. The dogs mark everywhere. There are intact bitches, and maybe they're in season. It's just like, it's like a kid going to Disney World. It's just a huge distraction. And so I would definitely work on making sure the dog is fluent with all of this stuff in much less distracting environments. I have a 2-year-old golden named Excel, and you saw him in some of those videos. But with him, this situation would be really, really hard. And so I would start in the parking lot, and I wouldn't move into the show area until I had some good attention in the parking lot and had some things that I could work with. The other thing is, the longer the dog is in an environment like this, the more difficult it's going to be. And so, especially when they're kind of learning these games, it's going to be tough for them to give you offered attention for, any extended period of time. And I don't think it's fair for us to ask our dogs for offered attention for a huge length of time. So I think, if you could work on it a little bit and then put the dog away in the crate. And right now in the ring, if you're waiting for the judge's exam, maybe not to worry about it, especially before the dog doesn't really understand what we're asking, and try to find something else that you can do, whether it's just feeding the dog, whatever. You can't really do get it games, I suppose, in the ring, but I wouldn't, depending on how long it is, if it's 2, 3, 4 minutes, that's a long time for a dog to sit there and do nothing. So you can try to play little games with him, or you can do a relax down, or maybe, just some sort of behavior where he can just kind of hang out and where he doesn't have to be on. One thing that I try really hard to communicate to my dogs is when they're working and when they're not. And if I'm doing a training session and I need to stop in the middle to talk to somebody or take a break or rethink my plan, my dog either goes in a relax down, or they go on a station, or they go in a crate. So I make it really clear to the dog, we're not working right now. I don't need attention from you. So make sure you're doing that with your dog, that you're making it really clear when I want your attention and when I don't. Confirmation is not a place where you need his attention for the most part. So I would make that clear that, in certain situations when we're working, I do need your attention and you need to be able to respond to these cues. But maybe this isn't a situation where you do need his attention the whole time. So I hope that is helpful. I think definitely taking a step back, making it easier for him by reducing the distractions is the first step, and then slowly making your way into the actual ring or into the actual show environment. I think that would really help him. All right, we've got a couple of videos here to review. So what I'm going to do is play the video all the way through, and then we'll go back and talk about it.
Nicole, I'm Kelly, and this is Henry. I'm going to do a little bit of attention work with him, and then a couple working cues to see if he's ready to work. Henry. Henry. Excellent for you. Henry. Good boy. Get it. Touch. Nice. Jen. Excellent boy. Get it. Good boy. Giddy up. Yay! Good boy. Very good boy. Get it. Giddy up. Excellent for you. Get it.
All right, so this was a really good video. I like a lot of what I saw. We're gonna go ahead and just kind of play through it again, and I'll pause it and
Nicole,
have some
I'm
comments.
Kelly, and this is Henry. I'm going to do a little bit of attention work with him, and then a couple working cues to see if he's ready to work.
So I like that you started with the treat on the ground. I think that's a great way to start, to pull the dog's attention off of us, and then makes it easier for them to put it back on.
Henry.
That response to the name game was pretty quick. What I maybe would have done is waited just a little bit longer to make sure he's done swallowing the treat, and we'll see that here in a minute. The other thing is, for the first couple of times, I'm probably just going to reward the offered eye contact, because that's what's most important to me, especially when I'm trying to get to where I can work some behaviors. The name game is important, but I need the eye contact in order to proceed. And so I generally will start with 1 or 2 reps of you make eye contact, get a reward.
Henry.
You notice there, you said Henry pretty early. He was still kind of eating the treat. And then instead of responding to you, he kind of just sniffed around. So he did respond, but it wasn't as quick as I would like to see. No big deal, but this is information for me. I kind of file it away of, oh, okay, he's not quite ready to move on to the next step. So I maybe would repeat this, or maybe instead of moving to something more difficult, I would try something different. When I do the name game, I want a super quick, immediate response. I don't want them to sniff around or to think about it. And so what happens if you do continue to reward this is you'll just, he'll start to respond slower and slower to his name, and you kind of lose that immediate, what type response from the dog. And so, again, you could just not do the name game here, and you could just reward for offered eye contact. And if you notice that he is being slow to come back to you, then you need to do a little bit more warm-up because he's not quite ready. But he is coming back, so that's really good.
Going for you. Henry.
That was quicker, so that was great.
Good boy. Get it.
I really love your clean mechanics here. I love how you say get it, and then you pause, and then you throw the treat. What I'm wondering, though, is what exactly are you marking when you say get it? He kind of nudges your hand, and then you say get it. So just be really careful that you know what you're marking. The get it replaces the click in this case. It's just a different type of reward marker. So you want to make sure when you say get it, or when you say yes, or when you say click, that's the behavior that you're wanting to reinforce. But I loved how you said get it, and then you pause, and then you threw the treat. So there's no confusion there. You can see here he was a little slow to come back. Again, I would just file that as information. I would think, oh, he kind of struggled on that one. Maybe I want to repeat the same one, or maybe I want to go back to something just a little bit easier before I continue on.
Touch. Nice. Jen. Excellent boy.
Another thought I have as I'm watching this video is I'm wondering, what is your reward marker that means come to my hand and get the treat? You use nice, you use excellent, you use some generic praise. And so again, I think being really, really clear with our dogs is important. So pick one word or one sound, it can be the click, that means that's what I wanted, here's why you're getting the treat. And in this particular case, it means come to my hand to get the treat, or the treat will be delivered to your mouth. So I think praise is awesome, but I like to be really specific about, whatever reward marker I'm going to use, whether it's yes, or whether it's get it, or whether it's catch, or, whatever. But I use very specific reward markers so the dog hears it, knows that's the behavior they're getting reinforced for, and then they know how that reinforcement is coming.
Get it.
Now that one, it looked like you rewarded his eye contact, which was perfect. He was kind of looking at your hands. He looked up at you. You said, get it. You paused and you threw the treat. So I really love that repetition.
Good boy. Giddy up.
This is adorable.
Yay! Good boy.
So again, you're kind of using generic praise, which is totally okay. That's fine. If I use generic praise, though, I just don't usually follow it by a treat. So I wouldn't say, yay, good job, and then give him a treat. If I wanted to give him a treat, I would say yes or something along those lines, depending on how I was going to deliver that treat.
Very good boy. Get it.
He has lovely attention, and you can see he's trying to
Yeah.
offer some things. Oh, super cute.
Excellent for you. Get it.
Good. So yeah, this was great. I really enjoyed this video. Thank you so much for sending it. I think you're doing a really good job. He's a lovely dog. He clearly has a good bond with you. And he's very attentive, which is super cool. So I think you're doing great. So just keep working on it. Try to clean up your markers just a little bit. Be real careful about your rewarding. And then if you see that he's struggling to come back to you right away, then just try that one again or make it slightly easier. So if I'm doing, say, a get it, and I notice my dog is scanning the environment before he comes back to me, I will either do like a yes, which means come to my hand and get a treat, or I'll do another get it, maybe a little bit shorter. But I'm not going to proceed in difficulty until my dog comes right back. It's after he eats the treat that gives me the information of what I need to know, of how ready he is, how into me he is. And so I'm looking at that little piece from when he eats the treat till he gets back and returns eye contact. And I want that piece of the chain to be really quick. And I want to see that he's eating the treat and re-engaging with me immediately. And until I get that, I don't move on. So very, very nice job. This was a good video. All right, here's our next video. The sound in this video, this was taken at a show, and so it's pretty loud. I wasn't able to really hear what the handler was doing or saying, so I couldn't hear any type of markers or anything. But we'll just go ahead, we'll kind of watch the whole thing, and then we'll go back through it. All right, great. This is a super cute little corgi. What a fun dog. So we'll just kind of go through the video and I will do some pausing and we'll talk about it a little bit. Again, it was a little hard. I couldn't tell at all if she was cueing things or I couldn't hear yeses or anything like that. And so it makes it just a little bit more difficult because I'm not able to see how your timing is versus your reward. And, you know, are you doing that pause? But just keep those things in mind. This little guy is very attentive, super cute dog. And I think you did a really good job rewarding that attention. So we'll take a look here. I'm not sure if that down was offered, but it was a good reward. He's got a really nice little down. I really like how you're rewarding off to the side. I think you're rewarding for offered eye contact here. And you're doing a really good job rewarding off to the side so that he can just turn his head and look back up at you. So that's creating this nice clean little loop, which is great. That's definitely what we want. And so nice job in the reward placement, deliberately pulling his attention off, and then he is able then to look back up at you and offer that eye contact again. You can see when you put your hands down to the side, that it made him think a little bit. He's like hand face, hand face, hand face. And he did really well with that. I see that you rewarded him when he looked at your face. As he gets better at this, go ahead and wait for a little more steady eye contact. I really want my dogs to understand it's not about the hands. You look into my face and you give me a couple seconds of really good eye contact, and then I will mark and reward. Sometimes if our timing is off just a little bit, if you have a dog that does a lot of glancing back and forth, that can make it a little more difficult for us to get that timing perfect, so that we are certain that we're marking the look at the face and not accidentally marking the look away. So this is great. I think you did a good job. But as you guys progress with your training, just wait for a little bit more. Make sure it's a look at you versus just a glance. That was much better. You waited longer that time, so I like that. With that one, I couldn't quite tell. He was doing a lot of glancing back and forth again. So you can see how easy it is to accidentally mark him looking away versus looking at you. Now with this little sequence here, you asked for several hand touches in a row. And with this one that you just asked for, he's struggling a little bit. In that case, I'd make it a little bit easier. If he is super great at hand touches and does them all the time, it's okay to ask for multiple ones in a row. But if you're in a really distracting environment or you're struggling a little bit, you probably want to go ahead and reward after each one, just to make it a little bit easier for him so he doesn't get frustrated. And a couple of times here, he doesn't do it right away. He kind of hesitates a little bit. And I would just file that away as information again and think to myself, okay, I need to reward quicker the next time. We don't want to build in these chains where the dog, kind of looks at the hand and doesn't do it, and then he finally does it after a few seconds and then he gets a reward. It's okay for that to happen a couple of times, but if that becomes a pattern, that's going to become the behavior to the dog. And I want to be really clear about, when I put out my hand, I need you to come immediately and do a nice enthusiastic nose touch, and then you'll get the reward for that. Good, and those looked really good, and you rewarded for it, so that's awesome. And you see there, you put your hand out, and he sniffed the ground. So that's another example there. He was like, oh, I'm a little bit unsure. I think what I would have done in this particular moment is taken the hand away, because I want to show him you get an opportunity to earn a reinforcement here, but I'm not going to sit there and wait for you. And so if you're going to do other behaviors like sniff the ground, I'm just going to take the hand away. It's no big deal. I don't say anything. I just take it away. And then maybe I'll say something, hey, buddy, what you doing? You'll re-engage just a little bit, and then I'll put the hand out. But I don't want to reward very many repetitions of putting out the hand, dog looking around or sniffing the ground, and then touching, because you're rewarding that whole chain. You're not just rewarding the touch. Again, like I said earlier, if you do it once or twice, it's not a big deal, but dogs catch on to behavior chains pretty quickly. So we just want to be careful about our criteria. And in this case, our criteria is, as soon as I put out my hand, you come in and you touch it. And so I think maybe just taking the hand away if he does get distracted like that, and then just thinking to yourself, okay, I need to make the next one a little bit easier so he can be successful and so that we can continue. Good boy. That was a great video. So thank you so much for submitting that. He's adorable. And I think you're doing a really good job. I think he listened great to your behaviors. He's got nice eye contact. So I think he looks really good. And just keep working on that criteria and making sure that you're paying attention to how long it takes him to respond to your cues, because that's another thing that tells you, is the dog kind of with me, or is he completely ready to work, or is he just not even there? As I mentioned earlier, there's a lot of distractions at confirmation trials. So being able to break these behaviors up a little bit and being able to separate them out from the distraction will be really helpful for you. But you are well on your way. He looks really good. All right, so for those of you guys that are members of the IAABC, this is your CEU code. So if you remember and you need credits for this presentation, you're going to go to the website, which is listed there on the bottom, and you're going to enter the code on your account page. And if you have any questions, then just go ahead. You can read that little bit on the bottom, but you can email IAABC if you have any questions or have trouble with submitting the code. I want to thank you guys so much for joining me for this presentation and for submitting your questions and videos. It was a lot of fun and I hope you learned a lot.